Hi, Afia. How are you?
I'm okay, I think. At the start of the day, one has to think whether we are okay or not, see how the day progresses.
But your day starts very early, so I know that,
That's
so you're
it's been a few
probably wide
hours. So
awake.
does yours. I know that
Yeah,
as well.
that's true. That's true. So, Afia, we're starting. I know people only think of women when March comes along, but we've been wanting to do these interviews with women who are doing various things in different air verticals where they're creating an impact and speaking up against issues that need to be talked about and that many other people don't really consider important. I'm not saying men are not involved in this movement,
Yeah.
but since you've been talking about the environment and about climate change for quite a while, and not just talking about it but actually doing things, I thought it would be good to have a conversation with you so that we could bring this awareness to a lot more people than we've been able to, especially young people. And when I say young people, I know we've got young champions as well in the climate change area who are doing a lot of interesting things. But nonetheless, let's start, because a lot of people confuse the word climate change with environment, and then they say, what does it even mean? They don't really understand the concept of climate change. Can you explain it in the simplest of terms so anybody can understand it?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity because, unfortunately, why many people don't know about it is because they think climate change is a science subject or it's for the environmentalists to talk about. But this is something that is impacting the lives of each and every person living on this planet Earth. So everybody needs to know about it. What actually is interesting is that the younger people know a lot about it, more about it than the older ones. The older ones who have actually been the reason for this problem that we are facing. And the younger people are, they have a lot more sources to be aware. I mean, in our times, there weren't as many avenues of learning things or even just knowing about it. Okay, learning maybe implies something, a deep dive, even if you don't do a deep dive. But climate change is something most of the young people who have access to any kind of information platform are aware of, at least. But how it impacts their lives and how much more it is going to impact the life that they know of as their normal, that is something that we need to talk more about. And this is why we need to open up that conversation and get out of that niche where climate change had been nested earlier. And this is a thinking that is, now prevailing across the board in the climate change fraternity, that we need to get out and not just, preach to the choir and talk amongst ourselves, but we need to talk to people who don't know about it or who may want to know more about it. So I think this is a great opportunity because from what I know a little bit, because of knowing you, your interaction or your audience is more, the young, the smart, the tech savvy, the people who know how to get more information if they get interested in it. So this is absolutely the perfect platform. So thank you for that. Now,
so what is climate change?
Yeah, so climate change actually is the way so it's a new normal, let's just say, and it is human induced. So now, the debate about climate change, of the ifs and when it is there, is settled. It's been settled for quite a while. I mean, okay, Trump is a new recent phenomenon, but generally for the world, it's been settled for a while that this happened due to the intensive human footprint on nature, which started around the industrial revolution, because that is when humans became very, very extractive and exploitative of natural resources. And what they were taking, so Earth has the ability to heal itself. Nature has the ability to heal, but it has its own pace and it has its own processes of healing. And when the human intervention actually sort of threw that process out of sync by doing all those extractive processes much faster than the earth could heal, that had an impact on the climate of the earth. because the global temperature kept rising. Now, there's no point now in going into, how the greenhouse effect, etc., in this half an hour, 45-minute conversation. I'd rather, cover a lot of other things that people, what is happening to us, what can we do about it? But for anyone who wants to know more about it, there's a wealth of material available, and for all kind of age and intellect levels. So, I would urge people to learn what climate change is, because not everything related to climate change, picking up plastic bags from the street or not using plastic bags is good for the environment. It may not directly link to what climate change is. Climate change is basically the result of the emissions that humans have been throwing into the atmosphere, especially because of the fossil fuels. And that is what has been, heating the earth. And that sets into motion so many chains of events that are now impacting the entire globe. So that, in a nutshell, I would say, is climate change. Of course, that's not all about it, but whoever wants to read about it, there's a lot more. And I would also, without sounding alarmist, although that report is very alarming, it was just yesterday that the UN, sounded the doom and gloom alarm, because the things are worse than what we imagined them to be. And the actions need to be taken much faster than we thought we could take, to reverse.
Okay, so if I were to ask you, how is it that each one of us is really negatively impacting the environment on a daily basis without even thinking about it? What are the things that we are doing that we should stop right away?
Stop right away maybe is a little bit more difficult than just, pointing out to items. It's more about behavior change. Okay. So stop this consumptive behavior of just, taking things, of changing and throwing away things, even when they are still useful, just because it's in to buy new clothes, so you throw away your old. It's in to get a newer cell phone, it's in to get newer devices, even if the earlier ones, yes, there are reasons when people need to change, when the system stops working, when the new software cannot be, and that also, by the way, is a problem, because the companies, it's so many people say it's a capitalist thing. The drivers of climate change are actually related to capitalism, because again, that's a consumptive behavior. That's an extractive kind of an environment that you're living in. So what can you do right now is to stop dumping stuff that is still useful, especially stop using stuff which is, throwawayable. A plastic bottle you drink and you chuck it out, those kind of things. Plastic bag in which the thing, so you can have plastic bags. So plastic is a great invention. It's a very convenient invention, and only this last generation has been used to it. Earlier generations didn't have it, and they still function just fine. But it doesn't mean that when you invent something new, you give it up because it's convenient also. But there has to be this limit to convenience where you start actually producing a lot of waste. So we need to stop.
Reuse is one of the solutions.
Reuse is fine. Let me just show you this. This is a sort of a plastic bottle. Yeah, okay, acrylic, but plastic. I've been using it for the past 5 to 6 years when I was given this at a thing. And when people say you're using plastic, I said, but it's not going into the bin. It's not going into any of the drains, and it isn't blocking drains, and it isn't flooding my city. So that is the kind of thing that it's the easiest fix that you can do. The other is on a bigger level, the kind of fuels we use, the emissions that we produce. So there is this shift towards hybrid and then towards totally electronic vehicles. So you don't use, throw pollutants into the air. Then at home also, we do use many things. Many people still burn their waste, the kachra jalatna. All those things, that's just spewing a lot of pollutants and toxic pollutants into the air. So if you can start just thinking, that thinking process is the first step, that we must not damage the planet where we live, and then see what are the kind of things that damage. So these are just the very simplest of things that I've said. We mustn't, strip our environment of the green cover. That's also something easily doable. Yes, there needs to be development. We need roads, we need buildings, we need bridges, etc. But there is always this concept of offset. If the trees have to be cut along the way, more trees, because you cut a 40-year-old tree and you plant one in its place, it's not going to replace it, because for 40 years, it's going to take as much time to grow and, give you as much oxygen or sequester as much carbon. So there are these fixes. It's about a balance, striking a balance. That's the most important thing. But it all starts with a behavior change and a realization that we need to do something.
Okay. So tell me, how and when did you get involved in this movement? Is there any one single thing that caused you to take up the mantle to champion the environment?
So I don't know if I'm doing that. I mean, maybe.
No, you are. I mean, you're seen as one of the voices who's talking about climate change, who's encouraging people to reuse. So yeah, I mean, you're seen as one of those people, not the only one.
Absolutely.
So when did it actually start?
There's a tribe. There is a whole tribe.
There is a tribe.
Obviously there were people.
No, and that's fortunate. There needs to be a tribe. In fact, each of us needs to get
there are
involved.
people from whom I drew my inspiration. I wasn't obviously the first. There were other people who were doing it, and I was inspired. And maybe if I want to sort of absolutely keep my feet on the ground and not be lifted to cloud 9 by people like you who think I'm really something, is actually I was just doing my job. So I'd always been sort of environmentally conscious, not to throw waste. And that is something that I had it in me, maybe because I was a student of geography and I was more in touch with nature than generally people have the opportunity to be. So I'm not going to put the blame game. People don't live the kind of life where they realize that these things are important.
Of course.
So there are people like us who jabber, and try to get the realization there. Yes, there are some who deliberately harm. So that's another story altogether. But when I started working for IUCN, now that was the world's largest platform of environmental organizations. It's a union. So it has members. And those members do these different things. There are some members who are more focused on saving the species and wildlife. There are some more into, planting forests and saving trees. And there are some who are into policy making. So I was actually, I was already sensitized because of my academic background. And then I got a job in which, I could actually, I somehow, it's like I fitted into that niche in my personal life that, okay, this is what I want to do. There were a lot of other things that I was doing. I sort of consider them a part of my past life. But this is what my present life is all about. And I really want to actually keep on doing this because I think it's very, very important. It doesn't impact just my personal likes and dislikes. It has a much wider, umbrella. So.
Okay. So tell me, how are climate change solutions involving women both in rural and urban environments? They need to be an integral part of, a participant in this movement. How are they being involved, and are they taking it a lot more seriously than many of the men who are part of our society?
Okay, so yes, it is the entire discourse of climate change has come to realize that women are disproportionately more impacted by the effects. So they have to be, on the table.
How so? When you say that, why do you say that?
Okay, let me just give this one small example I've been giving these past few days on similar discourses. When there is a flood, who do you think will swim away from the rising waters? How many women know swimming? It's just a simple query which may make you realize that women do not even have the opportunity to save themselves from the impacts of climate change, one of which will be more frequent flooding. Because it's culturally, and here I'm talking in our context, you drive down anywhere, any small water body, any public pool, any, small canal or whatever, you will see these young boys dunking in it, jumping in it, swimming over there. You never ever see women. Women are living in that very environment where that water body is near their house. But when water rises in that water body, it's going to spell death for them, and it's going to spell survival for the males. So that is one very simple example, and this can, be extrapolated over the urban and rural.
Okay.
And the other thing, if I want to relate to it, the city where you and I are sitting in right now, 2015, we experienced a very, very severe heat wave.
Yeah.
A lot of people died. If you do a gender analysis, the people who survived were the ones who were able to find some shade. I'm not here going to go into the affluent people, because they had access to there were electricity breakdowns, but they had generators, they had UPS, they could put on the AC when the electricity was there. The common people out on the streets were the people who were actually dying of exposure to heat. Did you see any women sitting outside on the roadside under the shade of a tree, in parks, on any shaded place? No, they were right there in those dark tank alleys where there was hardly any breeze, because that's how more than half of our city lives. So women are disproportionately. Then again, while I would dispute with anybody who says that women are physically weaker, because the kind of work that women mostly do, and I'm using the word mostly, is because most of the women in my country, they live in the rural areas, and they do all the hard work. They go and fetch water from miles, and they carry those, on their backs. They go cut wood, they carry wood home. They may probably also be, carrying a small child while they're doing that. So physical strength is also something that, cannot be said that women don't have. But it's access to the kind of escape routes. If it's a pregnant woman, if an alarm is sounded in a community, and there are very few places where there are, the opportunities to sound alarms for disasters, will she be able to run as fast as a man? So there are some of these realities, which is why we say the women are disproportionately able to deal with the impacts of climate change. Then there's assets. How many women own assets? So when you're talking about climate change vulnerability, we also measure the resilience factor, that how can they bounce back after being struck by a certain impact. How many women own the assets? How fast can they be? Will they be able to build their, their house or anything? So it's a whole cultural, socio-economic package that we have to look at when we are talking about the disproportionate effects on women. Their access to nutrition is not the same. Again, that is cultural. That is not natural. They don't get as much nutrition. So there are so many factors that have to be kept in mind when you're talking about women.
So what are some of the important issues stopping this systemic sustainable development?
So this is
when you talk about it, it seems so simple. There are things that we need to do to make sure that things change. So what is it? What are the systemic issues that we are not being able to address? What can we do immediately to change this?
So like the theme of this year's, Women's Day also says, break the bias. We need to break that bias, which keeps the women away from decision-making positions, from taking their opinion into account, and to thinking that, oh, this is not a field, where women would know anything. And the women are working in the fields. They're tending to the livestock. They are part and parcel of your, the environment where there are trees. When the trees are cut, they are also impacted. So women know. They know exactly right from the ground up each and every issue. When there is water scarcity, they know. They are the first ones who have to walk further and further to a watering hole to fetch that water. Then there are related health issues. With the water is not clean, then there is illness. Then, they're losing children because there's a lack of nutrition, because of food insecurity. If there is a shift in the climate, which leads to crop failure. So it's a whole cycle. This is why it's called an ecosystem. We cannot really talk of any one thing. So there are species that humans interact with. The species die out. and humans dependent on them, then that's another loss for them. Their whole habitat changes. So women are impacted in all of them. They know about it. They can talk about it. They can, point out the problems. So the dialogues cannot happen without taking the opinion of women, without taking those the insights and the knowledge that the women have. And then there are women who have enabled themselves with knowledge at the academic level, at the policy level, at the actual implementation level. They need to be at the table. They need to be taken on board in decision making.
And isn't that being done?
Not enough. Not at all enough. I mean, you speak about it, I speak about it, we call out manuals. There are women who are there who know the subject as well, if not better than the males who are called here. And I will not make it into a man versus woman fight, because we have male allies. We have very good male allies, and we need male allies. But generally, we need to actually keep on talking about this so that women can also take that space. And if that is not given willingly, then I guess they have to elbow in. And I know of instances where that has been done, and that has then been acknowledged that yes, they should have been a part of this. We should have actually called them in instead of them barging in. So
at the policy level, at the government level, is enough being done, or has there been some movement towards making things better? Because this government and, even previous governments, some have talked about, growing more trees. I mean, this current government has talked about growing, I don't know, millions of trees and addressing the issues of the environment. But has enough been done, or is it just a lot of talk?
No, so I won't be dismissive by saying that nothing has been done. A lot has been done, not just by this government, by the way. In fact, this government has the capacity, or either it has to walk the talk. It does talk about it more. The previous governments also did it. I mean, we've had a national climate change policy since 2012, which predates this government. Before that, we've had our national environment quality standards way back from the 90s. It's not as if nobody has been doing anything.
But Afia, policies and things exist, but is any execution happening?
Like I said, things are happening, but not enough and not fast enough. There are many things that had been put in place. Like you said, the Climate Change Council, why hasn't it met? That's the question we ask. There are these other forums, commissions are formed, committees are formed. They don't meet, or they meet and then their decisions are not implemented. And if they are only in a recommendatory thing, so that's like, checking a box there, okay, we made it because it was required by the law to make it. So I have a problem with those kind of things. And this is why I seem to be in a hurry when I say things are not being done fast enough. But yes, they are being done. Our national climate change policy has been revised since 2012. It still has to be approved and uploaded so people know that there is a new climate change policy. There was a huge gender gap in the policy. The world has realized these things, and we are actually trying to play catch, and which is a good thing. Even if we are playing catch, it's a good thing that we are now at least doing it. So it's called CC gap. In the climate change, gender gap, an entire stakeholder process was held in which women from all walks of life were asked to give in their input in the context of climate change, that where are the gaps and what can be the actual implementation, and this is a global requirement, and most countries have their CC gap documents ready, which is like a parallel document to the climate change policy. So ours is being ready. The process has all been completed. So we are doing the right things. We are making the right sounds, even at global level. We are also doing very good things. The Sindh Forest Department has increased the area of mangroves 300% from 2008 to now. And unfortunately, the negativity comes in when you're living around the city and you see the mangroves being cut there. But that's the humans. It's the humans who are doing it, and the human needs, if they are fulfilled, they probably will be kinder to the nature. Except the mafia, because they need those things. I mean, how do people cook if they don't have gas? So they lop off branches and they cook. Or anything beyond that, of course, we need implementation mechanisms. So things are slowly getting together, but it's forums like yours, it's forums like other media outlets who provide the opportunity to get people aware, and that brings these different actors who are able to do these things, and they have been working in silos as well. to come together. Maybe once, that gelling of the institutions occurs, you will see a greater impact. So I sort of live in that hope that that's going to happen, because we cannot actually work with one department not knowing what the other is doing. Or like, they dig up your driveway to put in one kind of wires, and then they dig it up again to put the other pipe. So that approach has to finish. We need to come together.
Absolutely. So tell me one more thing. Are universities getting involved, or educational institutions at all? Because awareness can start at that stage, and the young people once they understand the importance of what is being said, they seem to proceed at greater speed than the rest of us.
So I'll be sounding like a broken record by saying, yes, they are, and not enough and not fast enough again. Okay. It's not just the universities. Yes, academia is involved again. We need to break those barriers that the science department needs to sit with the social sciences department. It needs to sit with the architecture department. It needs to sit with the social policy department, economic department. Those departments have to, because climate change responses are intersectional, because the climate change impacts are intersectional. That one word needs to now become the umbrella under which everybody, tries to come up with the response. So yes, there are academic institutions which have created think tanks to work towards this. There's a greater awareness at school level, which I think is the basic level where we need to start. Yes. And by schools, I don't mean the regular formal schools. I mean madrasas. I mean schools, informal school groups, or community, places. There's not a lot of literacy in Pakistan. So from your fraternity, I would urge youngsters to come up with solutions, because of one thing which has a great potential of bringing this kind of awareness is the teledensity in Pakistan. The ability to reach each and every corner with those messages, simple, small, maybe graphic-based messages. Not everybody has a smartphone, but something that can work for addressing the lowest common denominator. So those kind of things, we need that kind of messaging. So at that level, yes, I know that the curriculum is being developed. And not just the curriculum, there are many organizations who are working in that space, and they are coming up with very good tools, visual tools, audio tools, graphic tools, to be able to make aware, these communities who do not have access to literacy or education. So this is everybody.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question. There are organizations, there are people, there are initiatives that are already underway. Which is the ones that we can get involved in, that a lot of us can help move along, rather than creating our own silos and trying to address the problems individually?
So, I mean, if you sort of a very simplistic cherry picking, if you want to do, one, of course, is tree plantation. And monitoring. So yours is a tech community. We do hear ke laga to diya, and then what? So when the people who say that, no, this has a way of being monitored, then maybe, those monitoring mechanisms for the policymakers can be done. Yes, of course, the stoppage of production of waste, and then the waste that is left after you reduce it, how that can be utilized. So the word waste actually gives a wrong meaning. That waste is actually energy, that waste is money if it is recycled, and there are countries which are actually exporting their waste. They have so much of it that they are earning out of it. With over 220 million people, we produce a lot of waste, and then we just waste it. So we need to, and the idea also that there is any dirty water. There's no such thing as dirty water. This is something, this is something that each and every one of us can implement in our own home, whether we are living in one room, small apartment, or we are living in a lavish bungalow. Everybody uses water. No water should be wasted. You recycle the water. Even the water from the washrooms and the kitchen can be recycled. So there are ways to do it. Look it up, read it up. There's tons of material available. There are videos. There are people in our own country who are doing it, who are giving those, models of how to do it. So we must stop producing waste. We must start using it to our benefit, because that is what is going to lessen the pressure of the environment. And until each and every one of us can sort of get into an electric vehicle, which I hope is a public transport vehicle, which is electric and not personal cars, because personal vehicles are very, very damaging. Their footprint on the environment is huge. It's huge. And we have become used to one person per car. The countries which have realized this, they tax people who go in those, one person per car lane. So they make these things prohibitive. They make fuel very, very expensive, but you can't do that here because then there's no alternate. But they put in place, you've grown up in Hong Kong, you know that how many people own cars, and even those who own, how often do they take them out? It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And they don't need to. They don't miss anything. They don't miss doing anything because public transport is there. Singapore is like that, and any other. So I don't usually quote Western examples. Let's just keep closer to home so that it sounds more doable. These are countries which were not even countries when Pakistan was formed. And they were not really, very far ahead. And yet they've made these strides despite the population pressures. So there's nothing that we can't do if we have that will, if we change our direction, steer our course towards sustainable solutions.
Yeah, definitely. If we have the alternate, if we have a good public transportation system, why would you or I want to sit in traffic, take out our own cars, even own a car?
You're right. Fumes and breathe in those fumes.
Yeah,
it's a health issue. Climate change is a health issue as well. Poor air quality is a health issue.
Yes, I was with Sophia Hasnan last night. So this was one of the subjects that was being discussed as well, the quality of the air that we breathe. Maybe we don't take it seriously, but it is affecting us. It's going to affect children. It's going to affect the future generation. So if we can't think of ourselves, let's think of the future and the future behind. Thank you so much, Afia. This has been a great conversation. I know we could have talked about a lot more, but you have things to do and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but maybe we'll follow this up with something else. And if you start any initiatives where you want people from the entrepreneurial startup committee to their community to get involved, let us know. I think they want to, they just feel that they don't know how. Although you're right, there's so much material available. There's so much that each of us can do. So thanks so much.
If I wear only my communications hat, that is something where your tech community can come in. Like I said, we are the 5th most vulnerable. Now we've slipped to 8th, which is called comfort, but to the 8th level out of 186 countries in the world. We are in the top 10 bracket, and we have been there for the past decade and a half. And we've experienced disasters. Some are cataclysmic, which everybody gets to know, but there are slow moving disasters, slow onset disasters like desertification, like crop failure, like, losing the habitat, which people don't generally get to know. So awareness is key. And like I said, your tech community is very, very rightly placed to be able to help in that.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
So maybe
creating awareness,
my call for action
ourselves and convincing other people to do so as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Afia.
Thank
Great
you.
talking with
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.